What if I told you that one of the most authentic racing films ever made actually got some of its most dramatic moments completely wrong, and that the real story behind James Hunt and Niki Lauda's legendary rivalry was somehow even more incredible than what Hollywood showed us? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into Rush, Ron Howard's 2013 masterpiece, about Formula One's most famous rivalry. We'll separate fact from fiction, uncover what the filmmakers changed, and reveal some shocking truths that didn't make it into the movie. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never watch Rush the same way again. But first, let me blow your mind with this. When the real Niki Lauda first saw Rush, he thought he was portrayed too negatively. But by the premiere, he was singing a completely different tune. What changed his mind? Well, that's just one of many surprises we'll uncover today. Let's start with the spine of the story, the 1976 Formula One season. This part? Absolutely accurate. Hunt and Lauda really were locked in one of the most dramatic championship battles in motorsport history. The stakes were real, the danger was real, and the outcome came down to a single-point difference. Number 1. James Hunt really was a wild partier. But here's what the movie didn't show you. Hunt was so extreme that the film actually toned him down. According to his biography, Hunt claimed to have slept with over 5,000 women. He had a particular thing for flight attendants, and he wasn't shy about it. The man once wore patches on his racing suit that read, "Sex is a high-performance thing, and sex breakfast of champions." And yes, he really did show up to formal sponsor events in jeans and flip-flops because he had it written into his contract that he didn't have to dress formally. Number 2, Hunt's pre-race vomiting ritual was completely real. Before every single race, James Hunt would throw up. Whether it was nerves, excitement, or the after effects of the previous night's partying, nobody knows for sure, but it happened every time. Number 3, the Spanish Grand Prix disqualification actually happened. Hunt won the race, but his McLaren was found to be 1.8 centimeters too wide during post-race inspection. McLaren appealed and eventually won, getting Hunt's points reinstated. As a joke afterward, Hunt was filmed polishing a sign on his car that read, "Caution wide vehicle." But here's where things get interesting. That dramatic opening scene where Hunt and Lauda first clash at Crystal Palace? Complete fiction. And this brings us to one of the biggest changes the movie made. The movie presents Hunt and Lauda as bitter enemies who gradually develop mutual respect. The reality? They were friends from the very beginning. In fact, they even shared an apartment in London early in their careers. Can you imagine? The methodical, calculating Lauda living with the party animal Hunt? "Yes, we were friends," Lauda confirmed in interviews. "I knew him before we met at Formula One. We always crossed each other's lines. He was a very competitive guy, and he was very quick. In many ways, we were the same." So why did the filmmakers change this? Simple. It makes for better drama. A story about two friends competing professionally doesn't have the same emotional impact as sworn enemies learning to respect each other. But this change actually undermines one of the most beautiful aspects of their real relationship, that they could maintain genuine friendship despite fierce professional competition. Now, their racing styles really were polar opposites. Lauda earned the nickname "the computer" for his methodical, precise approach. Hunt was called "Shunt" because of his aggressive, sometimes reckless driving style. These contrasting approaches set up the perfect rivalry, even between friends. Let's talk about Lauda's portrayal. Daniel Bruhl had to wear prosthetic teeth to play him, because Lauda was genuinely nicknamed the Rat due to his prominent front teeth. Marlboro, his sponsor, even put "the Rat" on his helmet visor as a marketing gimmick. But here's what's crucial to understand about Lauda's character in the film. "I was not as strict as I appeared in the movie," the real Lauda admitted, "but I was more disciplined than he was. I would never drink before a race. Certainly after it, I had to. Every race could have been my last." The movie shows Lauda as almost machine-like in his precision, but the real man was more nuanced. He was disciplined, but not emotionally cold. He just understood the mathematics of survival in a sport where drivers had a 1 in 15 chance of living through a season. Now we come to the centerpiece of the film, Lauda's horrific crash at the Nürburgring. And here's where Rush becomes almost documentary-like in its accuracy. The track really was that dangerous. By 1976, the Nürburgring had claimed over 50 lives. It was 14.2 miles of incredibly narrow track carved through German mountains. And at the speeds these cars were traveling, averaging 112 miles per hour, it was essentially a death trap. Lauda really did call a meeting of drivers to try to get the race canceled due to rain. And he really did lose that vote by just one vote, not the landslide the movie suggests. Hunt's charismatic argument that canceling would only benefit Lauda's championship lead helped sway the other drivers. But here's a detail the movie got wrong. The Nürburgring was never called the Graveyard by F1 drivers. Jackie Stewart actually nicknamed it the Green Hell after winning there in 1968 while racing with a broken wrist. The crash itself? Absolutely accurate in every terrifying detail. Lauda lost control, hit the wall, the car burst into flames, and he was trapped for nearly a full minute in an 800-degree inferno. His helmet flew off, and he was breathing toxic fumes the entire time. Fellow drivers Brett Lunger, Guy Edwards, Arturo Merzario, and Harold Ertl pulled him from the burning wreckage. "Another 10 seconds and I would have died," Lauda later said. The extent of his injuries was exactly as shown. Severe burns to his hands, eyelids, and forehead, his scalp and right ear charred by flames, and internal damage to his lungs and blood from toxic fumes. He slipped into a coma, and doctors administered last rites. But here's the part that will give you chills. Lauda's own description of fighting for his life. "When I came to the hospital, you feel like you are very tired, and you would like to go and sleep, but you know it's not just go and sleeping. It's something else. And then you just fight with your brain. You hear noises and you hear voices, and you just try to listen to what they are saying, and you try to keep your brain working to get the body ready to fight against illness. I did that, and that way, I survived." His wife Marlene's reaction was exactly as portrayed too. "My then wife fainted when she first saw me," Lauda recalled, "so I knew it could not have been good." Here's where the movie's accuracy becomes almost unbelievable. Lauda really did return to racing just 6 weeks after nearly dying. 6 weeks. From a coma to competing in Formula One. His first race back was the Italian Grand Prix on September 12, 1976, and he finished 4th. Meanwhile, Hunt retired from that same race after spinning out due to technical issues. The irony is perfect. The reckless driver Hunt fails to finish, while the nearly dead Lauda scores points. But the movie doesn't capture the full psychological toll. Lauda had a panic attack during his first practice session back. His tear ducts had been damaged in the fire, making it difficult to blink and causing his eyes to water excessively. Imagine trying to race at 180 miles per hour while your vision is constantly blurred. The climax of both the movie and the real 1976 season was the Japanese Grand Prix at Fuji Speedway. And this is where the film's portrayal becomes fascinatingly complex. Yes, it was raining heavily. Yes, Hunt argued that the race should be canceled just as much as Lauda did. Yes, the race organizers decided to proceed anyway because of television contracts. They couldn't afford to lose the broadcast revenue. But here's what makes Lauda's decision even more remarkable. It wasn't just about the weather. His damaged tear ducts meant he couldn't properly see in the rain. After 2 laps with water streaming down his face and his vision completely compromised, he made the logical choice and retired from the race. "It was not a difficult decision for me," Lauda explained, "because the circuit was flooded. There was so much rain that nobody could drive. For 2 hours, nothing is happening. And then the race director came and said, 'Now we got to start the race because it's television time and at 6 it's dark.' And then I said, 'Look, the circuit is flooded like before. Why the hell do you want the same result?' This for me at the time was completely stupid." Hunt went on to finish 3rd, winning the championship by a single point. But here's the beautiful part that the movie captures perfectly. Lauda wasn't bitter about it. "I said at the same time there, if anybody should get the championship, then I'm happy it's James because I liked him. And we were not buddies, but we were at least simpatico. We took care of each other from the heart in a very nice way." And Hunt's response? "I feel really sorry for Niki. I feel sorry for everybody that the race had to be run in such ridiculous circumstances. I wanted to win the championship, and I felt that I deserved to win the championship. I also felt that Niki deserved to win the championship, and I just wish we could have shared it. Now let's talk about some things Rush chose not to include, and you'll understand why. First, James Hunt's marriage to Susie Miller was even messier than portrayed. Hunt admitted he was roaring drunk through his entire wedding ceremony because he didn't want to get married in the first place. He told friends the engagement was a mistake from the beginning, but felt it was too late to back out. When Susie had an affair with Richard Burton, Hunt actually saw it as a blessing, a way out of the marriage. The two men talked amicably on the phone about the transfer of Susie, and Burton agreed to pay Hunt's $1 million divorce settlement. It was treated almost like a business transaction. Second, the movie hints at Hunt's later struggles, but doesn't show the full extent. After retiring from racing in 1979, Hunt lost most of his money in bad business deals. He fell into serious alcohol addiction and eventually ran out of money completely. In one incident that didn't make the movie, Hunt showed up to meet Lauda on a bicycle with a flat tire because he couldn't afford anything else. Lauda gave him money to get his life back on track, which led to Hunt's successful career as a BBC commentator. Third, Hunt's death in 1993 was both tragic and strangely romantic. He died of a heart attack at age 45, just hours after proposing over the phone to his girlfriend Helen Dyson, who was 18 years younger than him. He'd finally found happiness again, and then it was over. One thing Rush absolutely nailed was the technical authenticity. Ron Howard and his team used actual Formula One cars from the era, including one of Lauda's real Ferraris from 1976 and an authentic Hunt McLaren. They filmed the crash scene on the exact same bend at Nürburgring where Lauda's accident occurred. The racing sequences are some of the most accurate ever put on film, thanks in large part to Lauda's direct involvement. He spent extensive time with Daniel Bruhl, helping him perfect not just the accent, but the technical understanding of racing. I spent a lot of time with him, which he asked me to do, Lauda said. I really liked the guy from the first day on. He was a down-to-earth, real talented guy. Interestingly, when Bruhl first contacted Lauda about meeting, Lauda told him to bring only hand luggage, in case they didn't like each other, so he could quickly fly back to Berlin. That's classic Lauda. Practical to the end. Here's what Rush understands better than any other sports film: the psychology of risk. The movie doesn't just show us crashes and victories. It explores what kind of person willingly climbs into a machine that has a 1 in 15 chance of killing them each season. The film perfectly captures the different ways Hunt and Lauda processed this reality. Hunt dealt with it through hedonism. If death was always around the corner, he'd live every moment to the fullest. Lauda dealt with it through calculation. If death was mathematical, he'd minimize the variables he could control. Neither approach was wrong. Both men were responding rationally to an irrational situation, and that's why their friendship worked despite their differences. The movie also gets the era exactly right. 1976 was the last year of truly dangerous Formula One racing. Safety improvements in subsequent years would make the sport much safer, but Hunt and Lauda raced in the final season where death was genuinely probable, not just possible. Here's the final twist that brings everything full circle: who was actually the better driver? The movie presents them as equals, but the statistics tell a different story. Before his crash, Lauda had more than double Hunt's points. Even after missing 2 races while recovering from nearly dying, Lauda finished the season just 1 point behind Hunt. If you think about it, Hunt needed Lauda to almost die, and then have to race with damaged vision in the rain to beat him by a single point. Lauda went on to win world championships in 1975, 1977, and 1984. Hunt's only championship was 1976. If Lauda's safety concerns about Nürburgring had been listened to, he probably would have won 1976 easily. But here's what makes their story beautiful. Neither man cared about these calculations. They respected each other's choices and achievements. Hunt got his moment of glory. Lauda got his vindication through longevity. And both men got something more valuable: a friendship that lasted until Hunt's death. And speaking of Hunt's death, Here's a detail that perfectly captures his character. He died of a heart attack in 1993, at age 45, just hours after proposing over the phone to his girlfriend Helen Dyson, who was 18 years his junior. Even in his final moment, Hunt was living life to the fullest. Here's something that will hit you hard. Niki Lauda passed away in May 2019 from renal failure and complications. One of his final public statements about Rush was that he enjoyed the film immensely and only wished his good friend James Hunt was still alive to see it, because Hunt would have loved it just as much. Think about that for a moment. After decades, through rivalry and friendship, through near-death and championship glory, Lauda's final wish regarding their story was that he could have shared this celebration of their friendship with Hunt himself. The sport they raced in was so dangerous that drivers had a 1 in 15 chance of surviving each season. Today, Formula One has implemented the Halo system, a protective frame above the cockpit that has saved an average of 2 lives per year since 2018. The crashes that killed Francois Sever and Helmuth Koenig at Watkins Glen in 1973 and 1974, both referenced in the film's opening scene, would likely have been survivable with modern safety equipment. But Hunt and Lauda raced in an era when death wasn't a risk to be minimized. It was a mathematical certainty that someone wouldn't make it home. Remember how I opened this video? About Lauda's reaction to first seeing Rush? Here's the complete story. When Lauda saw the pre-screening footage, he did think he was portrayed too negatively. But when Bernie Ecclestone told him how much he loved the finished film, Lauda gave it another chance. His final verdict? When I saw it the first time, I was impressed. There was no Hollywood changes, or things changed a little bit Hollywood-like. It is very accurate. And this really surprised me very positively. But there's an even more perfect reaction. When Lauda first watched the completed film, his immediate response was, "Shit. That's really me." The man who lived through these events, who nearly died at Nürburgring, who lost a championship by a single point, looked at Hollywood's version of his life and recognized himself completely. Here's the truth that Rush understands perfectly. Sometimes the most dramatic stories don't need Hollywood exaggeration. Sometimes real life provides all the drama you could ever need. James Hunt and Niki Lauda didn't need their rivalry artificially inflated or their friendship fabricated. The real story? Two very different men pushing each other to greatness while facing death every weekend? Is already perfect. The only thing Rush really changed was making them enemies at the beginning instead of friends. But maybe that's okay. Maybe some audiences need that arc to understand what Hunt and Lauda knew from day one, that you can compete fiercely with someone and still genuinely care about them. In the end, Rush isn't just accurate about the facts, it's accurate about something deeper. It's accurate about what it means to be human in the face of impossible odds, what friendship looks like under extreme pressure, and what it costs to be truly great at something that might kill you. And that, more than any technical detail, is why Rush remains one of the greatest sports films ever made. Now I want to hear from you in the comments below. After learning all these incredible details about Hunt and Lauda, which driver is your favorite and why? Are you Team Hunt, the charismatic risk-taker who lived every moment to the fullest? Or are you Team Lauda, the calculating genius who survived the impossible and came back stronger? Let me know what draws you to one or the other. And here's the big question. Which, based on a true story film, should I tackle next? There are so many incredible real-life stories that Hollywood has adapted, changed, and sometimes completely reinvented. Drop your suggestions in the comments. I'm always looking for the next fascinating story to dive into. If this deep dive into Rush opened your eyes to details you never knew, please hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm show this content to more people who love discovering the truth behind their favorite films. And if you want more content like this, where we separate Hollywood fiction from incredible reality, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. I'm constantly working on new videos that uncover the real stories behind cinema's greatest true tales. And trust me, the truth is always more fascinating than fiction. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next deep dive.